right, this week we're also celebrating another historical event. This weekend marks 50 years since the creation of the Susquehanna River Basin Commission. The multi-state partnership coordinates the management of water resources along the river. This morning I'm joined by the Executive Director, Andrew Dehoff. Thank you so much for joining us. I love the backdrop behind you. Talk about what it means to celebrate 50 years.
Thanks, Ryan. Yep, that is the river. It's very inspiring to have it here as a view from my office. 50 years is a milestone, no matter what the occasion. Certainly, it's important for us because it marks the halfway point of the 100-year agreement that New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland and the federal government set up to collaboratively manage the resources of the basin for the good of everything, for the good of economic development, for the good of residents, and to preserve and maintain our ecology. It's an opportunity, we think, to look back. What have we accomplished over the past 50 years, and look ahead. We're taking advantage of this milestone to update our comprehensive plan and lay out a path for river management for the next 20 years or so.
We talk about celebrating 50 years. Obviously, celebrating anything is challenging during the pandemic. But what types of things do you do, when your primary goal is to take care of a river? How do you celebrate 50 years?
Well, we celebrate past successes. What have we learned? Where have we made improvements? And recognizing some of those things and learning and putting in place what we can do to move forward. We've maintained our work despite the pandemic. We're out there sampling. We're out there working with our partners, even virtually, and setting ourselves up for success in the future.
I know it's odd with the pandemic, and maybe some people don't realize this, but there is a lot of politics that go into this. There's a lot of political willpower that is needed to ensure that you get grants, that you have what is necessary to be able to manage the river and the Chesapeake Bay and all the different things, the different rivers and estuaries that are tied and interconnected together from New York all the way to Maryland. How difficult is it sometimes to bring all these parties together when you have facts in front of you to say, this is where we need to improve, or this is where we've gotten better? What's it like trying to bring all these different groups, different politicians together?
It is challenging, absolutely. Everyone's very busy trying to do their normal jobs in addition to cope with what's going on. I'll say a couple things. Fortunately, technology is very helpful, just like the way we're conducting this interview. And that's been a hallmark of the commission, is taking advantage of cutting-edge science and technology to enable us to do our work. And I think the second thing in our favor is just the passion and dedication that we have, that our staff has, and that our partners have in maintaining our vigilance in managing the resource for the betterment of all.
Yeah, I know the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, they do kind of like a report card every year, and they scored the health of the Chesapeake Bay at about a D+ this year. They said it's about down a point from a year or two ago, and they attributed that to a number of different things. But they did say that they would like to see a kind of a recommitment from the federal government. Can you talk about that, maybe what you've seen over the course of the last 2-3 years in terms of grants and getting the money and access that you need to make things better?
Yeah, it has been a challenging landscape. I think that fortunately there are always champions for the Chesapeake Bay who understand the importance of continued focus on its restoration. So there have been continuation of very critical financial resources from Washington, from Congress in particular, and I think that will continue with the new administration. Likewise, the states are committed. Pennsylvania is committed. The commission plays a key role behind the scenes, sort of, with Pennsylvania in helping to ensure that they understand the challenge in front of them and have the resources to meet it. So I understand the Bay Foundation's report card, and certainly there remain challenges with the Bay, but we've made a lot of progress. And I think it's important to recognize that, it was 300 years ago that we started mucking up the landscape that has led us to where we are now. We're not going to resolve that overnight. And even if we do meet our goals, when we meet our goals, it's an ongoing maintenance issue. It's a long-term commitment, and everyone's all hands on deck when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I want to point out that a D+ is actually significantly better than it was even 4, 5, 6 years ago. Can you talk about some of the improvements that have been made and what your assessment is of the Susquehanna River and some of the waterways in and around Pennsylvania?
Sure. Yeah. There have been improvements in discharges from wastewater treatment plants, for example. It's all about the introduction of nutrients and sediment into the waterways that make their way to the bay. So I think appropriately a focus is on the local areas. What's the water quality in our local streams, and how can we improve that? So we've done things like work with communities and counties to assess their abilities to put in stormwater management projects, and where's a good place to put those. We've collected data and developed some technology that shows what are advantageous locations where you put a project in and you really get the most bang for your buck. And we have multiple issues. Flooding is an issue as well. Communities experience flooding or flash flooding. So you look for projects and initiatives that can solve more than one problem, because that brings additional resources into it. So yes, you're helping some water quality, but you're also minimizing or reducing flash flooding. So I think the important thing is having that local focus, really helping everyone understand why it's important and what they benefit from taking on activities like that.
Well, look, we want the SRBC to be around for another 50 years. What do you think you can accomplish if you had that amount of time, another 50?
Well, I think we have accomplished quite a bit in all of the areas where we have authority, and I think we will continue to do so. In the area of flooding, for example, shortly after the commission was founded in 1971, the basin suffered its most extreme flooding event ever, Tropical Storm Agnes in 1972, and that started us off on the path of being a leader in flood preparedness. We pulled groups together and along with financial resources and developed some of the most cutting edge forecasting and warning capabilities. We were sort of a pilot area for the entire nation, and things that were developed for our basin are now used nationwide. The commission also developed a new type of mapping that shows what parts of communities are likely to be underwater when based on the forecast that you get from the National Weather Service. So we'll continue that area for sure. Flooding will continue to be a problem, particularly under the specter of climate change. Not really knowing. We think there will be more extreme events. So the challenge will be trying to define that and trying to ensure that communities have the resilience to those events. Along those same lines, water supply is critical. We've made some good strides in putting programs and policies in place to ensure that communities can rely on their water supplies even during times of drought. And drought, just like floods, are unpredictable, but there will be more of them. So when they do happen, we want to be there and being able to assure communities that their water sources have been assessed, and we know that they are sustainable through a drought. They will be able to continue to provide the water that is so critical to their residents, to industries, to power development. And I think getting back to the Bay, that's just going to be such a huge focus.
Well, Andrew, I'm gonna run you out here because we're out of time. But I just want to say happy anniversary, Andrew Dehoff, the executive director of SRBC. Thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
Take care. It's been a historic week with the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. The Political Insiders join us next with a look at what we can expect from the Biden presidency.